Hi everyone, welcome to Tales of Dread. In this episode, we'll hear from someone who went camping in the deep woods of the Appalachian Mountains and ran into a very large person who left some evidence behind. Then we'll hear from a runner who has some pretty strong evidence that portals do exist. But before we get to the story, I'd love to have you on board if you like my show and listen to it often but haven't signed up yet. Let's start the stories now. I was camping in the Appalachian Mountains 2 weeks ago when I had a very scary thing happen to me. Before I go shopping, I need to say a few things about why I was in the Appalachian Mountains. I'm very interested in bushcraft and survival in the wild. I've been improving my skills for a few years now, and I use them in the wild whenever I can. So when my friend told me he had found this great place in the Appalachian Mountains, I was all for it. I met my friend in a Facebook group about survival in the woods. Alex is his name, and he lives in North Carolina. We got along right away because we were both interested in being outside. We had been planning this camping trip together for weeks, and we were both very excited. When the day finally came, we drove up to the mountains and hiked to where we were going to meet. We were in a lovely clearing with a stream close by. We're going to camp for 2 weeks to get better at making things in the wild. Nothing bad happened during the first week. We were really enjoying ourselves. We caught fish for food from the stream. My friend's brother called him early on the morning of the 8th day to tell him that his mother had gone to the hospital. His sister wasn't doing well, so his brother told him to come home right away. I was worried about my friend and his mom, but I didn't want him to go alone. I offered to go with him, but he turned me down and told me to just keep going. I did that exact thing. I said goodbye to my friend and helped him pack up his things. I was now alone in the woods, which wasn't a big deal for me because I'd been on many solo camping trips before. We were way out in the Smoky Mountains back country. We didn't see anyone. I was used to being alone while we were out here, but this time it felt very different. I don't know why, but I felt like something bad was about to happen. I tried to get rid of the feeling, but I couldn't. I decided to set up my hammock for the night and go to sleep. The loud crash that woke me up in the middle of the night sounded like something big had fallen nearby. I sat up in my hammock and carefully listened, but I heard nothing. I tried to see what was going on in the dark, but I couldn't. I slowly got out of my hammock and reached into my pack for my flashlight and night. I turned the light toward where the noise was coming from, but I still couldn't see anything. When I heard the noise again, it seemed to be coming from behind me, so I started walking toward it. I turned around and shone the light in that direction, but there was nothing there. I went into the shelter we had built and just sat there with the door closed. God bless us, we made a door. Even though this survival shelter wasn't bear-proof, it did hide me. I waited and listened for hours as this thing went around and around the shelter. It was breathing, and it smelled terrible. The smell made me want to throw up. I sat there with my knife in my hand for 3 hours, ready to defend myself. If this thing tried to break into the shelter during that time, I would hear it coming and going. Then everyone would stop talking. Then I could once again hear it breathing. It sometimes grunted, and when it got close to the shelter, it would walk away. Almost like it was making fun of me. I didn't know what this thing was, but I knew it wasn't a person and it wasn't any animal I'd ever smelled before. When the sun finally came up, I could see through the shelter that something was walking away through the woods. It was very big. It was moving forward with its back legs. After waiting a few minutes, I carefully stepped out of the shelter. It was nowhere to be found. But it did lead behind this tuft of fur, as you can see in the photos I sent you. There was a dark brown patch of fur on the ground that had a reddish tint to it. It's about the size of your hand and smells terrible. I took 2 photos of it, and I've attached both of them to this email. I was sure this was a Sasquatch. So, I called the park rangers and told them where I was. They got there in about an hour. Even though there was only one ranger there, he took hair samples and put them in a plastic bag. He asked me a lot of questions, and I told him over and over again that this thing had been hanging around my campsite all night and smelled terrible. I told him that I had seen it leave when the sun came up, after I had finished packing everything. On the way out, he walked with me back to my car, which was about 200 yards from our campsite. He came across this big pile of poop. It really interested him. I've never seen scat like that before. He also got that and put it in this big bag made of plastic. He took my information and said he would get back to me when he knew what this was. I still haven't heard from him. If and when I hear from him, I'll let you know. This took place at the start of summer. After a few weeks, I saw one of your YouTube videos for the first time. It was kind of comforting to hear about other people's supernatural experiences. At first, I wasn't sure if what I saw was really supernatural, and I'm still not sure exactly what it was, but I'll try to explain it as best I can. I spend a lot of time in the woods because I love hiking and trail running. I usually hike with my wife or sometimes with a friend. When I run, though, it's usually by myself because I'm usually training for a race. I will soon be running a trail marathon. So I've been doing a lot of training. In the southeast, it's hot. So, during the summer, I get up early and usually start my runs at dawn or before Monday. I didn't have a lot of time to run, so I had to hurry. I had to join a Zoom call right away. I couldn't miss this meeting, but I did want some time to get ready before it. Since I was made Director of Product Management, this was only my second team meeting. My company has been less strict about people working from home since the pandemic. I still go to the office Tuesday through Thursday, but they wanted us to keep these Monday morning meetings so that we could start the week as a team. I thought I could do a quick 6-mile run that morning if I started in the dark, and I planned to run a few miles in the evening if I could, since I started earlier than usual and it was still very dark. I wore my headlamp so I wouldn't trip or bump into anything out there. It was a surprisingly cool morning, and I quickly got into the rhythm of my run. Since I'd run this trail so many times, I was able to kind of just zone out. I heard something as I was running up the first hill, but I wear those bone conduction headphones when I run so I can hear what's going on around me. The sound wasn't very loud, but it didn't belong in the woods. It sounded like a loud humming. At first, I thought my headphones were broken, but when I got to the top of the hill, I saw what was making the sound. I knew it was where the noise was coming from, but I had no idea what I was looking at. It was this circle of light in the middle of the woods. I tried to figure out what I was seeing, and my first thought was that it was a portal of some kind. I had no idea what a portal was. I've seen them in movies, like Doctor Strange and other things. But here in the middle of the woods, I thought that if I didn't have proof, no one, especially my wife, would believe me. I also wanted proof for myself because I was sure I was dreaming or having a hallucination or something. So I took out my phone and took a photo. Then I just stood there and looked at this circle for I don't even know how long, because I couldn't see what was on the other side. I realized that I had to keep running. When I looked at my watch, it was glitching, which my Garmin had never done before. It flashed like it was running out of power. I went to get my phone, but it was completely dead. When I began, it was fully charged. So it didn't make sense. I'm glad I had the photo. No one would think this was true. At least, I hope I took a picture of it. I knew I needed to go. I didn't want to get any closer to this thing, whatever it was, because I was already too close. I guessed it was maybe 6 feet away. I didn't want to be pulled into another world or something. I know that sounds crazy. I didn't know what to think when I saw a glowing circle in the woods. I had no intention of touching it, but I had to find out what happened. If something went through the circle, I took my water bottle and threw it through it. Disappeared into thin air. When the circle was finished, it was gone. I looked at my watch and saw that it was still working. The phone was still dead when I took it out of my pocket. Okay. Just now, I saw a doorway in the woods. Again, maybe. I didn't even know what a portal was or why it would be there. I can tell you. I ran back to my car quickly. Not only because I didn't want to be late for my work meeting, but also because I couldn't wait to charge my phone and look at the picture to prove what I had seen was real. When I got into my car, I remembered that the night before, when I was out using my battery pack, I had taken the charging cable out of my car. I had to wait until I got home. I ran into the house and plugged in my phone as soon as I could. My wife said something about how late I was. I began telling her what I had seen. She laughed and said I watched too much television. She stopped laughing and asked me what I was talking about, so I guess she realized I wasn't joking. When my phone finally turned on, I opened the photos and there it was. I showed it to her, and she thought it was weird, too. I told her about the humming, but the water bottle was the strangest thing. I was too busy to get ready for the meeting. But fortunately, it went pretty well. My wife also works from home as a recruiter, but she spent the whole day reading Reddit posts and researching portals, so she must not have had much work to do. I think she was a little sad that she didn't get to see it, or maybe she didn't believe me and wanted to see it for herself. I skipped my run that night and went with my wife to the same place to see what we could find. As soon as we got to the top of the hill, I saw that there was nothing there. I don't mean that there wasn't anything strange about it. I mean, there was just nothing there, like all the grass, leaves and roots. Everything there was destroyed by the fire. Many times this summer, I've gone back to that trail, but I haven't seen this thing or anything else strange. I know that my story isn't as crazy as some of the ones you've heard, but to me, it was supernatural. I don't know if it was really a portal or where it led, but I do know that my water bottle vanished right in front of my eyes, and I have a picture to prove that it was there. Maybe someone else has had a similar experience or has more information. I'd love to hear from anyone who has seen something similar. Tell me what you think of these two stories in the comments below. The first story has some very interesting proof that Sasquatches live in the Appalachian Mountains, and the second story has more of the same. If you saw a portal in the woods, what would you do? Would you go through it? Would you run away, or would you stand there and throw things into it? I'm not sure. If I didn't hear some really cool music coming from the other side, I probably wouldn't go through. Thanks for coming to watch.